First of all, we'd like to welcome you to ThePrint. Thank you. And this is colleagues. This is the German ambassador to India, Dr. Philipp Ackermann. And of course, we also have the spokesperson, the media in charge for the German embassy, Casper, who's also here. And welcome to ThePrint, sir. As you can see, we have a very young colleagues here who cover various facets of from politics to science to foreign affairs. From my team, I have Keshav with me, as you all be aware. So Keshav covers the foreign affairs for us, and then we of course have Nishit, who's the director of operations, and then we have other colleagues of mine, Triya Gulati, who's part of the features team, Soumya to Mayank, and others.
Soumya heads our science team.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so she's someone who's an expert.
So let me remind you, she's the one who broke that story on somebody buying suddenly lots of pictures of Pahalgam from Maxar.
Oh, right, okay.
She broke that story.
Right.
And then we have, of course, Mayank, Sagarika, and others here. So, yes, the stage is all yours.
Fantastic. I'm still very impressed by the rejuvenating, I would say, that Keshav has undergone. I met him on Friday. There he had a complete different look, and now I feel that he might go into some Brahmin temple work or something, next time saffron. No, it's a pleasure to be back. I have a very good memory of my first round of discussion with you all. I admire ThePrint. I think it's a fabulous medium. We are reading it regularly and daily, and I think one good thing about your company, if I may say so, is that it's so young. You have such a lot of young engagement, and also it's so female. That's also very, very important. And I admire that, and I think it's a great.
We apply affirmative action of 10% top up for male candidates.
10% top up. 10%. All right. Okay, that's good. So it's are interesting times. That what diplomats say when times are terrible. But we feel that it's interesting, and we are all looking at what happens everywhere, basically with shock and awe. But what I'm about to say now, and then we open up for discussion. I try to answer whatever question I can answer, is that for Germany and India, it's basically an all-time high, I would say. We have not only, economically, its business is going really well between our two countries, with clear dedication to by German business to come more and more in a substantive way to India. So that's basically one pillar, but there is also this defense and military cooperation pillar that has, over the last 2-3 years, developed big time. We had our military coming for Tarang Shakti, this very interesting air exercise where our military was very impressed with the Indian way. For the first time ever, German Air Force came to India and exercised together with the Indian Air Force, and that was very, very impressive. We have this submarine, on the table, submarine deal on the table, where negotiations are going on, but I think it looks quite promising for us. We have also other defense cooperation that is much easier than it used to be, because the German government has decided to make or to develop a preferential procedural way for India in our defense cooperation, which now leads to a much quicker agreement from the German side, from the government side. So then there is this migration chapter where I feel, this has been basically the most amazing development in the last couple of years. We have 60,000 Indian students in Germany, a growth of 20% last year. We have this year 35% more applications at German universities than before. That has certainly to do with the US, of course, but I can tell you that most of all the state-run German universities, and that is 90% of German universities, are very happy about Indian students, because they excel in many ways, and they are a very valuable contribution to the young academic crowd in Germany. And we do hope, very much hope that these, once they graduate, that they at least spend a couple of years as young professionals in German business life, so that they, maybe after a couple of years, they might get back to India in this circular migration idea. But our offer to the Indian side is our education system is free, and then you have 18 months after your graduation to find a job in Germany and stay on as long as you like, if you have a job. So that works well. We have a growing community of Indian professionals in Germany. Now we are at about 3 lakh Indians in Germany, and this number is to grow. And in an economy that is basically not going so well, we have a very slow growth in Germany. Next year, hopefully a little more. But one reason why the growth is so slow is that there is so many vacancies of skilled labor. So we need urgently skilled labor. So that's a new area of cooperation where we are very happy that this goes so well with the government of India, but also with the people who come to. And then there is another area which I find hugely interesting, is this what we call the Partnership for Green and Sustainable Development, where Germany and India try to work together on climate change. It's not development cooperation. It's basically a program that is developed together with the two governments. And it's mostly based on very, very good conditions for credits. So let's say metros are financed with German money. That's a credit. It's not a grant, because we consider India a very developed country by now. But they are very good. The credit rates are very good, and Indians and the government, and also the state governments also like it a lot. And what we do in this area on renewable energy, smart cities, biodiversity, and preserving nature is really quite fantastic, and it's one of its kind, this partnership. So I would say that is an area of a broad range of baskets of mutual cooperation and sort of relations that flourish. We had the new government that has started its work in May, came through its foreign minister 4 weeks ago, and we expect the chancellor to come later this year sometime. We are very reassured that this new government also has this focus on India paper that the federal government developed and agreed upon last year is still on the same shelf. The new government accepts it, and is, for them, it's also the guiding principle for their relations with India. So for many, many reasons, we can discuss them why, India is very much on our radar screen. And it's an extremely rewarding job to be the German ambassador to India, because it's, I consider it a feel-good posting because everything works so smoothly. When you go to China, to Russia, even to Washington, things are much more complicated and not as easy as here. So that's where we stand, and I think maybe now we start our discussion.
The new impetus in India-Germany relationship, how much credit has to be given to Donald Trump?
I think
we should say thank you.
Yeah. I think one. So let me go one step back. What Germany learned the hard way in the last 5 years or 4 years, let's say, is that you can't be dependent on one energy provider. You can't be dependent on one security provider. And you can't be dependent on one business
one
provider.
Manufacturer.
Yeah. So, and that is basically, I think, the basis of our, rethinking of, you have to diversify. Business is China, security is US, and energy is Russia. And now when you think that if a green hydrogen infrastructure is set up and green hydrogen will be a source of energy, India becomes an energy exporter suddenly. I mean, that's a very interesting fact that we are. I went to Kutch and saw the Adani installations to produce green energy for the export market, it's a very interesting, for us, it's an interesting opportunity. And therefore, I see the German-India relations are this push, this boost of the German-India relations is basically due to the fact that we have been a little too convenient in many ways when it comes to our, it was very comfortable with the American security, the Russian gas, and Chinese manufacturing, and that is not the case anymore.
Yeah, so just a little personal insight on or experience on Germans outsourcing manufacturing to China. So there was a time at the Indian Express, we thought we'll modernize our printing machinery because printing machinery had not been modernized for some 30 years. And we figured out that the best machines were German Gauss. And then realized that Gauss is not made in Germany anymore. And this is almost 20 years back already. All Gauss manufacturing had gone to China. So then our fellows said, we don't want a Chinese machine. Right? Then we were told there's a Swedish printing machine. These two brands have ruled the large printing machine market in the world forever. That is Solna, a company called Solna. We were negotiating with them, and then they said, we are shutting down and we are moving our production also to China, manufacturing also to China. So by which time an Indian company came up in, I think, Kolhapur or Solapur in Maharashtra, said that, look, I don't do 60,000 copies an hour, but I do 30,000 copies an hour, and these are good machines, I make them. So we bought those.
We bought Indian machines.
Indian machines. And that's the problem right now with the tunnel boring machines also.
I think
those are yours.
It's Herrenknecht. So that's the tunnel boring machine is an interesting case. So it is clear that, for political reasons, the Chinese wouldn't let them out of, I mean, it's clear, I don't know, but it's very obvious that there was some political thing. So now they are out. That's fine. It's but so, Herrenknecht, of course.
So have they okayed it now? Are they coming in?
Yeah, they're coming in. So I think one came in a couple of months ago, even a year ago, and this one, the last one is coming now. But no, of course, the company says, this is not. I can't do business when the Chinese customs are not. So they are now setting up shop in India. So they try to produce here. So I think that's a good example of.
Because in India, demand will be so much, even within India.
So that's a good example for how to diversify. Don't put your eggs in one basket only.
What company is this?
Herrenknecht. It's a company that is the world-leading tunnel boring machine.
What's the name?
Herrenknecht, Herren, and then the word Knecht, which is like servant in Germany, Knecht.
Okay.
Herrenknecht. Family-owned business. He's still around. Mr. Herrenknecht is one of the most...
So tell me, which one of you, did you do that Nuremberg video? Somebody from your team did that video.
That was his. Yeah, his video. Yeah. Kaspar did it. Kaspar.
You did that. Yeah. That was brilliantly done.
Yeah, I thought it was very nice.
No? Yeah. Fantastic.
With the spices, no? The spices in the gingerbread.
Our daughter's a baker. So I sent it to her. And very nicely done. Beautifully done. Yes. Yeah. And your Hindi is good.
Yeah, he's very good in Hindi.
Hindi is good.
Very good Hindi speaker.
Yeah. And so I figured out what pepper sack means.
Pepper sack.
Pepper sack.
To this day it's used. Yeah,
yes.
It's most prestige with all these Indian spices you get.
Pepper sack is like Seth in Nuremberg. A rich guy who has sacks full of pepper. Because in old days people became rich from trading spices with India.
It's a tradesman, but it's also a little, I have to say, it's not exactly positive. No? You get a little...
You might lose him to Bollywood or something.
Next year. All right.
Ambassador, I'd like to build on the question that Shekhar had earlier asked. The whole Donald Trump question. He recently announced a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas. And we all know that 71% of H-1B visa holders are Indians. Do you see... in some way, the US's loss being Germany's gain? Will some of those people move? And the second part, move to Germany. And the second part of this question is that Germany was one of the early movers when it came to AI and semiconductors. And recently, we've also been seeing funding. Oracle recently announced that they were going to put $2 billion in a project in Germany. And there are many other such projects. Do you see some of that skill then moving on into the AI and semiconductor business, because we're seeing hundreds and billions of dollars just fly around every day now.
Yeah. So first of all, I think, I mean, of course, not everybody now will go to Germany. That's, I mean, those 71% is quite a bunch of people. But what I wanted to make clear is that our relatively liberal or pretty liberal immigration laws stand. There is no change. And even in a slow labor market like now, Germany this year, next year might be better, but this year, there are still so many vacancies in Germany to be filled. And that's not only, the top IT branch, it's also nurses and caregivers. And therefore, I think Germany is a very interesting opportunity for Indians. Now, you have to see that there is a very positive feeling about India in Germany. Migration is debated and it's not at all uncontested. But what we feel also is that, the experiences Germans have made with Indians is overwhelmingly positive. And therefore, I feel that, Indians don't get the heat when it comes to migration because they are diligent and industrious people who pay taxes and do their jobs and adapt as much as they can and want. And therefore, I think I'm very positive about Indian migration to Germany. Now, we don't, I don't know, it's very difficult to say, but we do maybe 30,000 visa for skilled labor a year. We can increase that. That's not a problem as long as people have. And there are many, many ways to get into Germany. You'll find them on our websites. But I just want to say that we are welcoming. We need skilled labor, and you will be. I'll be very honest with you. With the human capital India has, with well-trained people across the board, you have an incredibly strategic advantage because all Western countries, and Western-minded countries, I'm talking Australia through US, have all the same problem. That's demography. And if we want to sustain our standard of living, we need to open up. And, the worst birth rates are in Japan. I mean, the lowest are in Korea and Japan. But Germany with 1.4, 1.5, it changes from year to year. Since 50 years, you can imagine that this is not sustainable. We need migration. And Germany by now is a country where 20% of Germany 20% of Germans have non-German parents. 20%, it's huge. It's like Canada by now. So therefore, migration is for us, it's a lifeline, and therefore we want to do that. AI, we have taken the decision that we need to become independent in these crucial key industries from China and from others, and therefore the government will subsidize big time one big semiconductor factory in Dresden, and that is being built right now. So AI and these semiconductor industries are very, very, that it's not are very important and they are central in many ways. So academia, our research institutions, but also industries are investing heavily, and the government is trying to make that happen.
Hi, Your Excellency. I have a couple of questions. Now, you're talking about a slow German economy, despite the 500 billion euro investment debt brake that was passed earlier this year. So the larger question is, there is signs of German manufacturing coming under stress. So despite vacancies for skilled labor, are they actually hiring for those posts? Yeah. Right? And secondly, Germany, the second question I have added to that is, for the last decade, Germany has been sort of the hotbed for anti-migration debates. It started off with the protests in Dresden, which eventually led to the Alternative for Deutschland. I remember when I lived there, they were active even in a city like Bremen, which is considered to be the heartland for the Social Democrats. And it seems to be getting worse because Alice Weidel is very popular. So in that context, bringing Indians or saying we're open for migration, how does that sort of give confidence to people looking to move there, that this is a good place to come to?
It's a very, very pertinent question. I'm happy to answer. First of all, the 500 billion will kick in late. So it's not something that is now on the table. We'll see that in the first month of next year kicking in. And that's why government is confident that when this money gets to the business, gets to the projects that are being planned, that then the economy will also benefit from it. And therefore, I think expect next year's growth to be decent by German standards. Decent by German standards is between 1.5 and 2%. In a developed economy like ours, a 1.5% growth is a decent growth. Now we have 0.3%, so it's very low. It's very, very, very slow. You say manufacturing is under stress. That is exactly the case. And you see German industries are undergoing a huge transformation right now. Because what happened is that, our strategic advantage, namely being this engineering nation that, with its hidden champions are making cutting edge technology for many, many other countries, is completely under stress by China. China is coming up with machinery, with cars, with devices that are really of very, very good quality and are much cheaper than what you get in Germany. So basically, I think German business and industries are very much under stress right now because they have to find a way to get, again, ahead of the curve. But I'm pretty confident that, at some stage, many, many companies in Germany will find ways and means to get again ahead of the curve because the research and the R&D environment in Germany is just, unique. You have very good universities that work together with businesses. Business is giving money to universities in order to develop new technologies. And you have these, world-class research institutions like Max Planck and Fraunhofer who really are trying to get top-notch and developing technology in a way that is again, in the leading role. So I think German business is undergoing a huge transformation. Everybody is now realizing that, we have been very comfortable, maybe too comfortable over the last years. And we'll see how we get ahead of, this little corner in which or out of this little corner in which we are right now. It's a process, but I'm pretty confident that this transformation will lead to some better environment. I think that in the IT sector, you will always find vacancies that are to be filled. In the classical engineering, now the labor market is slow. That's certainly true. So when it comes to this migration debate, you will be surprised that AfD, this right-wing party that is very strong, is the biggest opposition party in parliament with, I think, 20%. They got by the last elections. They are not against migration, skilled labor migration. So I had the head of the party came to India, and we had a long discussion. And he says, I don't mind Indian nurses and caregivers coming to Germany. What they don't like is migration that is what they call illegal, which is a illegal migration. The refugees, asylum seekers. That's what they don't like, and they would like the government to be much tougher on those illegal asylum seekers, or what they call illegal asylum seekers. And it's true that Germany has a lot of people who are basically from other countries who live on social welfare. Over 1 million Ukrainians who have been fleeing Ukraine. We have taken in 1 million Syrians in 2015. Now you will see that out of these 1 million Syrians who came in 2015, 2016, a great percentage of men are working by now. So it works. After a while, they are integrating in the German labor market. That's a good sign. But migration is a stress for every society, not only for ours. In African countries, basically countries that take much more migrants than European countries, it's a stress situation. Look at the UK; they take a small percentage of what Germany takes, and it is such an issue in the UK. So migration is something that will keep us busy, but I would comfortably say that skilled labor migration from India, including the students, you will not find a lot of animosity or hostile feelings against India. Basically, when you go to Berlin, Punjab has taken over food delivery. It's crazy. You see only Punjabis, on e-bikes driving through it.
As long as Germans don't learn their driving manners from them.
They drive on big bikes and they do the food delivery, and basically we are not always sure whether it's all legal employment. Yeah, but that's not my task to find out. But it's they are very visible and very much there.
Ambassador, continuing with your response to this, the fact is that the right wing, like the parties like the AFD, is gaining traction, and they do have a strong view on migration, and not just on illegal migration. For example, if you look at the average Indians earn, as you said, the average Indian salary in Germany is higher than
Yeah.
that of an average German, right? And so one of the while students go. And we also had, issues regarding, my colleague would probably ask the question later on regarding the whole baby issue that was there. There are things where it is felt that, Germany may not be as open or as safe, let's say, for any other country that the Indians generally migrate to. How would you respond to that, especially given the rise of the right wing politics in Germany?
I mean, my argument here would be wherever you go, look at the United States of America, the welcome is a little, has become a little cold, basically the message is don't overstay your welcome, and the welcome is very short. And that the same is true for many other European countries, so you have to, in Germany, I would say, this is my, we would say in Germany, it's my kitchen psychology, it's my intuitive psychology. People are overwhelmed and stressed by what's going on in the world. They feel, mostly incorrectly, but sometimes maybe correctly, that 20 years ago things were much better for them than it is now. And therefore there is a general unease about, a quickly changing world. You have that in Ireland, you have it in the Netherlands, you have it in Finland. Old liberal democracies like the Scandinavian countries, look who's ruling Sweden now, look which parties are sitting in the Finnish government. So it's a phenomenon in the West, in aging societies, that people feel that their past was better than the future will be. That used to be exactly the other way around in the 70s and 80s. When I grew up, everybody was convinced that their children would have a better life, like in India a bit, where now every generation feels next generation children's will be more prosperous and will have a better life. And that has, it's upside down now. And therefore there is a nostalgia, and that leads to a sympathizing with parties who offer quick fix solutions in this. But as I said, even AfD knows about the need of having skilled labor in Germany. And in every hospital in Germany, when you are sick, you will see that half of the staff is not from Germany, including doctors. It's a very varied bunch of people. It's I think Germany is on the way to become Canada in a way, and that's not a bad thing. I like Canada; it's a great country. Of course, that it's skilled labor means families and people, and there will be problems, and that's clear. I mean, this is not, you don't have robots, you have human beings with, wives and kids, and that it's a challenge for any society. But I would say that Germany, with this liberal immigration law and a long tradition of absorbing foreigners, even foreigners from non-European cultural environments, is maybe in a relatively good place, seeing the fact that this is a stress factor everywhere.
Yeah, well, Ambassador, as Snehesh mentioned, I wanted to particularly ask you about the Ariha Shah case. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had also raised this issue last year. I believe Jain organizations, a delegation also met you. She has been in foster care for several years now. So any movement, anything that is being done in that case?
So, thanks for bringing it up. It is a constant subject between our two governments. We are listening very carefully to what the Indian government has to say in that matter. We are in close contact with the Jain community. Benny, on a weekly basis, we talk to them. We are in close contact with the youth authorities in Berlin. And I will tell you that now I think we are in a position where we can say maybe there will be an important step coming up, which of course has the judgment, the verdict of the court has to be taken into consideration. But after long consultations, we'll see whether we can bring her in a position that is also accepted more by the Jain community. So I'm confident that soon we'll have a new situation. I have to be very careful because, in Germany we are very, very strict and rigid with private data, so we can't really. The Germans don't even know the name. We would not mention the name of the girl. But I think that after long discussions and constant, deliberations and reflections, we might be on the way to find a good solution. I have to leave it like that.
Ambassador, I have one
Yeah.
question.
So my weekly column,
Yeah.
if it ever has a factual error,
Yeah.
that's because Amritash didn't catch it.
Yeah.
Because when Amritash walks in,
Does it happen? Does it happen that they have errors?
and you think I'll be spared by so many readers? No. So anytime he comes in and he says, I'm sorry, I have a small question. Somebody walks over my grave. And that happens every Friday.
All right. Okay, I better get prepared now.
Last week,
Chancellor Merz gave thrust to a new policy wherein the German government is asking the European Union to rally behind a proposal to use frozen Russian
Yes.
funds to the
Yes.
extent of $160 billion so that the same funds can be utilized by Ukraine to buy arms. Is there a plan in place for Germany to rally European partners to that extent? And also, has any communication been made to the Indian Ministry of External Affairs in that context?
So you're right. Chancellor Merkel has changed the German position. We were very conservative all the time. We said, we can't touch frozen assets from third parties because that would shed a bad light on reliability of financial interactions with the European Union. And European Union and the euro are a very sought after currency, and that we felt that it would not be appropriate. But now I think having seen that the Russians make no attempt to come to any constructive dialogue on Ukraine, we feel that this is the time now to look after funding that is long lasting, but so that the Ukrainians can sustain their fight. We don't see, unfortunately, any change in the war right now, in spite of all the efforts, including the Alaska meeting and others, have not led to any progress. You see that the Russians are not advancing in Ukraine. It's like they're sitting in the trenches and are willing to sacrifice more and more people. So that means, how do we sustain Ukraine? And that, I think, led to the change of attitude by the German government. Now, I think I'm not a complete expert, and therefore, talking to you in particular, I'm very careful, yeah, because the deal is, of course, that the money is not going away. It is just used for other purposes, and at the end of the day, there must be some reimbursement. Now, whether this is in the form of reparations, that's, I think, the thinking that the European Union has, is a debate. I think that this change of German position will certainly influence European leaders, and I can't say whether the result is there, but I think we are on their constructive way of dealing with it. It would allow Ukraine to purchase weapons and technology that would defend them. So I think it's a very interesting move, but the move comes out of an understanding that, in spite of all of efforts, international efforts, the Turks, whoever tries to find some way of at least come to a ceasefire situation, are in vain, because the Russians just don't. The Russians, I should say, Putin proper doesn't want it.
Ambassador, we have been reading news in recent days of, the largest lithium deposit being found in Germany. Can you shed more light on it? What does it mean, especially at a time when, supply disruption by China is creating upheavals?
Yeah, I mean that I haven't got really more information than you. I read the news. It is a very interesting development. It's lithium. I think the rare earths are not that rare. Actually, you find them everywhere. But the question is how to exploit them. How to in a sustainable way. And our Chinese friends have less of a impediment than maybe Europeans would have. But this is certainly some discovery that will facilitate getting more independent from one source only. So it's an interesting discovery, and I think we will look into how we can exploit it in a sustainable way.
Maybe Trump starts taking you more seriously.
Lithium.
Lithium.
Ambassador, you mentioned that Germany is going the way Canada did, right? And that just brings to my doubt that you now inviting a lot of Indian students. The numbers have gone up, but you have in the past raised concerns about these groups of Indian students or agents who are providing this thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, about 20% of the applicants that visa applications that you've received, close to about 20, is fake. A lot of forged documents were also attested. So what would be your message? Because you don't want a similar situation where Indians land up in Germany only to realize that their university is not recognized, they're on a different kind of visa, or their entire education trip is cut short.
Thank you very much for this question. It's a very important question. I'm very happy to answer this. But let me start by saying that out of the 60,000 in Germany, the overwhelming majority is really going to very good schools. There is a small group of people who I think listen too carefully to their agents. It is clear that private universities, and some of them being non-German universities, British and others, they have basically a contract with these agents. They get money for recruiting, and I would my appeal to every Indian student who wants to consider going to Germany is don't trust your agents too much, because the agents, they have their own agenda. They want to make money, and if they propose a university for 10,000 euros a semester, it is very beneficial for them. A state university costs nothing. You should not forget, when you go to a public university in Germany, is for free. So I would say, don't trust your agent. These universities are not at the same level of state-run universities, and they also, in some cases, not every case, don't offer German degrees. You have another degree, a British degree, Polish degree, I don't know. So for some Indian students, that's a big disappointment, because they feel they are, basically drawn into some scam, and when we talk, and Kaspar, you have experience as well, when we talk to Indian students in Berlin, which is quite fun, because some of them recognize me from social media, and we start talking like you do with the Indians, they express also their disappointment to go to these universities. We have a rejection percentage of 25% when it comes to these universities. Some documents are not accurate, but the English is not good enough sometimes, and we feel that the agents are really trying to tune, in a way, the applications in a way that so that we feel that the applicant is much better than he or she really is. So I would say, if you consider going to Germany, first of all, you should take the state-run universities as the most interesting place to go. You should. There are some private universities in Germany that are very good. I will not. They are excellent private universities, but 90% of the universities are not private, and they are. This is basically the safest bet. And if you go through agents, please be very wary and be suspicious about what the agent offers you. Sometimes it's really not in your interest.
Ambassador, we've been talking about immigration for a while now. Do you think this noise, these anxieties, or this sort of vigilance on immigration across the world is linear? Like, do you think it's only going to grow from here? Or do you think there's a possibility that it could be cyclical? Maybe not a 10, 20-year cycle, but maybe a longer cycle. I mean, one of the first immigrants in the US were people from Germany, right? And
Everybody in the US is an immigrant,
Yeah, I mean,
with the sole exception of a very, very small group of
the
Native
Chinese
Americans.
as a people, as a nationality, were the first to be banned in the US in the 1850s, 60s, when they went to California to work in the gold mines. But everything changed when the Civil War happened. So do you think there's going to be a cycle about this?
It's a very interesting question. I have to think about it. But what I would say is that one of the biggest tasks of the government in Germany and elsewhere is to make people understand the difference between legal and fair migration and illegal migration. We have illegal migration. I'm not saying that asylum seekers are per se illegal, but we have economic refugees who come through open borders into Germany and try to get into the welfare system. So you have to make people understand that there are two ways of migration. One is fair and legal, and one is not fair and legal. And if people succeed in getting that in the German heads, then I think it's not linear. It will then be more, can I say, balanced. So. But you have to see that. I will give you one example. I have my oldest and best friend is from the Ruhr area, the old industrial area in the west of Germany, where many cities. It's a big conglomeration of cities with 12 million inhabitants, which is big by German standards. He says his old mother, she's 88 or something, when she goes by train, she comes by train to go to see her daughter or somebody else. She says, I'm in a train with only African people and I don't feel at home anymore. No African young man in the train does anything to her. Nothing. It's just the feeling that you are, your environment is not what it used to be. And that's a big thing, that you have to take that into consideration, and you have to accept it also, that the feeling is there. And it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. In Canada, somehow it worked after a while, also in America. But we are not there yet. I think it takes a bit of time.
Good evening, Ambassador. I want to take you in a slightly different tangent. In about a month, we'll have the 30th edition of COP in Brazil. And especially with last year, after the election of Donald Trump, we had a lot of first world countries that sort of derailed from its climate commitments. My question to you is specifically because a lot of your collaboration with the Indian governments, the center and the states, are related to climate, sustainability, ecosystem revivals. You spoke about meeting a few companies on the green hydrogen project as well. Could you elaborate a little bit about Germany's focus on climate sustainability?
So I think even with the new government, you'll find no difference when it comes to our approach to COP. So we will pursue the same goals, and we will try to fulfill our commitments as much as possible. Now, the thing is with India, on a bilateral level, this partnership for green and sustainable development is a great success. Really, we sit together with the ministries, but also including private sector. We are trying to define these projects with banks, and it's really, and the Indian government is extremely forthcoming. They are very, very original and out of the box thinking. So I'm very happy about this partnership. That's not so much the case when it comes to multilateral fora. So last time in Baku, you had basically the very strange fact that the Indians were less constructive than the Chinese in this debate. And we are trying to make now, in the run-up to Belém, we are trying to join hands with India, or at least to get in a discussion with India, so that we don't see that repeated next year, so that we understand better where India comes from, what the Indian thinking is, where India can go, where there are areas of common interest, where there are overlaps. So the day after, we'll have our State Secretary for Environment coming exactly for this matter. So he will talk to the relevant ministries here. He will talk to the personalities that are involved in order to avoid this confrontational attitude that we had last year, and we were very surprised, because bilaterally it works so well, but multilaterally is more of a problem. So we'll try to figure out how we can work together better in this forum.
Ambassador, I'd like to draw you back in.
Migration.
No, not the migration part, but on the India-Germany part. One of the big issue between India and the US, at least formally, officially, is the whole, trade with Russia.
Yeah.
India's continued oil trade with Russia. How do you see India's relations with Russia, India's oil trade with Russia, and India's continued relationship? And where do you see India as, do you see India's role in what is happening in Europe right now between Russia and Ukraine?
So I think, it would...
So I have an additional question just on this specific thing, if you don't mind taking it, is that last week the EU High Representative Kaya Kala said that India-Russia ties are an obstacle for the India-EU FTA. So one portion is this, but the other is that the EU is publicly saying that this is an obstacle for any free trade agreement, yet they want to complete it before February, ideally for the India-EU summit. So that's the addition I have, is how do you see that in the EU sense as well?
You use the word carrot and stick approach.
Yeah.
So I wonder what's the carrot and stick for India.
Okay. You should not forget where she comes from. No? She's from the eastern flank. She has experience.
And she's got 30,000 Russian origin, Russian-speaking people there
in the country.
Who Putin's already instigating.
They are very, the Estonians are really the ones who are the most exposed to this, and you have seen that in a flagrant violation of sovereignty of nations, the Russians stayed 12 minutes in their airspace. And that was not a mistake. They had to be escorted by some Danish and Italian planes out of the area. So I say that I think the German, European, and Indian relations are on a very good track. We, I think, can do better, still better. And one thing is to understand each other better. It's valid for everything that has to do with Pakistan as much as it is for everything that has to do with Russia. I will give you one example. So there is a military exercise called Zapad, which means west in Russian, in Belarus, where India is taking part. And the Europeans don't understand, after this, really drawing together Modi and von der Leyen, the Prime Minister and the President of the Commission, the clear dedication to come to a closure when it comes to the free trade agreement by the end of this year. But then the Europeans say, why are the Indians participating in this clearly anti-European military exercise? When you ask an Indian, they say, we have always participated, and what's the big deal? We are exercising with the Russians since 40 years. But that's a sort of a lack of understanding. That's what I'm alluding to. I think the Indians don't know how big the Russian threat is in Europe right now, how the perception of the Russian threat has grown over the last couple of weeks, I would say. So drones in Copenhagen, we don't know whether they are Russians, but I think there are hints that they might be. Drones in Poland, clearly Russian. Planes in Estonia. That's all provocation. That is a provocation, and the Russians want to see whether NATO or EU or the European nations can be divided on that, whether they are united on that or not. And that, our eastern friends in the east of Europe, they feel very much exposed. And Estonia is a country of not even 2 million inhabitants, with a lot of Russians, as you rightly say. So the threat is palpable, the threat is real, and the geography is different here. You don't see Russia's imperialistic outreach in Ukraine and elsewhere. You see the friendship that has developed over the couple of last decades. So I think nobody denies India to be friend with Russia. That's a partner, a deliberate decision. You have been working with Russia in many, many ways. But what we would like India to understand is that the war in Ukraine, the war of aggression in Ukraine, is basically putting a whole continent under threat, and a continent that is also your friend. So this perception should be basically more developed in India. Now, when it comes to the oil purchase, the Americans have been very outspoken on this, and the tariffs have come. I think that when the European Union sets a cap on barrels of oil, 46 point something euros, that implicitly means that you can buy it at this price. I mean, this is not something that we will forbid to buy it at that price. But we have the discretion, of course, to forbid imports of refined oil to Europe, because we don't want that to be, contributing to the war chest of Putin. So I think it's a way of sitting at a table and try to understand what your opposite number is really feeling about this. The Indians have blamed the Europeans always to be naive on China for a long, long time. That has also changed. The perception on China by Europeans has changed. And I think that is maybe the way to move forward without giving up friendly relations with a country that is, was an old partner of India, but understanding, what this country does. Raja Mohan said this morning that it is now a situation. We had the First World War, we had the Second World War, we had the Cold War, and now we have the fourth sort of warlike situation in Europe, where Europe all of a sudden comes in the midst of the world's attention because of that. And we would rather not be in the midst of attention for this reason. But I think this might be the moment where you realize what an issue that is in Europe, what a huge issue that is in Europe. And it's not only about Ukraine, it's about more than that. It's about the sovereignty of Europe and its nations.
You likened it to India's Pakistan thing, that Pakistan is what? Yeah.
So I think, India also is blaming the Europeans for being too cool on India and Pakistan. But when you saw the reactions to Pahalgam, and you see that, there is a shift also in Europe. I mean, this is, compare them to what was said before, you see that there is a clearly more understanding for the Indian point of view.
So what is Pakistan to India is what Russia is to the EU?
Comparisons are not good. I don't think it's a good comparison. Can I say that the war or the clashes between India and Pakistan stopped after 4 days? After 4 days.
It is 87 hours.
87 hours. This is, I would say, a sign of maturity. Yeah? I think show me one conflict, even the war between Azerbaijan and Albania has lasted for much, much longer than this. And I think, and therefore, I think Pakistan and India are not to be compared. There are big problems between the neighbors, big problems, and they have not been solved. But when it comes to these clashes, at the end of the day, nobody is interested to pursue that forever, because that would be harmful to the population on either side of the border. And I find that's what I'm telling every German. I say, look at what they did. It's not that they have solved their problems, but they agreed on the fact that it's better to have not a war rather than a war.
We also played cricket.
Yeah, right? You have other areas
such as we did.
Ease up the tension.
So on immigration, I remember a line before I let you go that Tom Friedman used. He said that don't worry that your country doesn't have oil or gold. You don't have the resource curse. So don't mine your land. Mind your people.
Yeah.
Because your real asset is your people.
That's right.
And that's why skilled immigration is India's asset. Right. And it can be India's best export.
We are looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Ambassador, you are so generous with your time and patience.
Thanks a lot. Pleasure. Take care. Don't come. It's a great...